And today I want to cover something that is important to have into consideration when you want to call Australia the place that you want to be. And that's the pros and cons of living here, the positive and the negative. I want to put it in the balance and then do this comparison upon my own experience after living here for almost 11 years now. So you that are in Latin America and you're still deciding, hey, might be Australia the place for me to go, maybe it's Canada, or maybe it's the US, or if you just arrive and you just been here for the last year or so, I want to give you my perspective on what I think about this country, what I think are the beautiful things and the nice things that it has, and also the possible difficulties that you will encounter when you decide to develop your life here, like I've been doing, as I said before, for over a decade. And what a better way to start with the good things than going outside to the beautiful patio that I have in my house. Oh, I believe it's beautiful. To start with, the quality of living. Living here in Australia gives you a quality of life that if you come from Latin America like I do, and even more from a country like Venezuela in which we don't even have trains. They're just structures that one day will become the railways for trains. So once you come here and you have options for transportation, you go to the streets and everything is clean, everything is in an orderly fashion. You can go out at night and then you can be completely unoccupied about your own personal safety, focusing on the things that matter, on the experiences, on the relationships that you might foster. People that live here perhaps give for granted. You really appreciate that everything is working beautifully. Australia has amazing landscapes. All the beaches, you have Palm Beach, you have Maroubra, Manly, you have Coogee, and it's quite enjoyable. But then if you drive a bit further to the west and just an hour and a half away from the city, you have the Blue Mountains, you have Katoomba, and depending on the weather on winter, it might get to snow. That alongside with the weather, because even though we have seasons down here in Sydney, of course the opposite to the northern hemisphere, the seasons are quite mild. It's not like living in Canada, and that was one of the reasons why I chose to come here, even though we have winter here. And then you see my jacket and my beanie and everything, and it's quite sunny, it's quite cold, but it's not as cold as Canada that is snowing up to your knee. So all the things that are important is the fact that in Australia you have Medicare, and that's something that came into my mind when I was doing the equation about where to live. Here in Australia, we are pretty much covered if you have the permanent residency or you are a citizen, of course. The only things that are outside the scope of Medicare are dental procedures and your eyesight. That needs to be done privately. But the rest of the things, and even more important, the emergency ones and things like that, is all covered. So if you by accident chop your fingers, you can have them fixed, and it's not going to cost you anything because you're covered. Lastly, this is quite interesting. Here people say hi, hello, morning, afternoon. You see that people are polite. You don't see here often, well, that's in my experience. This can differ from from person to person. People are quite polite. So if you're driving down the motorway and you need to change lanes, people give you space. If you put your blinkers, they say hello to you when you are going into an elevator or you're getting into a place. People are more relaxed and more chill than the average Latin American city. Everybody's going to a place, but they are more than willing to give you their spot so we can all go together, and everybody's quite nice. I mean, I haven't met someone who just comes and then just ignores you completely in any kind of situation. People are always nice in my experience. So those will be the pros. The positives, los positivos. Now let's go with the other ones that are not as fun. The negatives, the cons. For example, here in Sydney, where I live, you have pretty much everything that's going on, everything that is fun, everything that means going out, everything that means having something to eat. happens nearby the city or in the city. If you are there, you have things open until late. All this buzz of people going and coming and walking and talking and having a good time. But the further you go away from the city, the more you go into the inner suburbs, and then where I live, which is the suburbs, which is like 15 to 25 kilometers from the city, everything changes. Everything closes early. Things are more tranquil. Things are quite different. So one of the big shocks that I had when I first came here is that I'm used that in Venezuela, everything stayed open until 9 p.m. in shopping centers or places that you can go after work to do some errands or to find for things that you need. But in here, it's just seldom places that do those kind of schedules, like office works, for example, or if you go to buy your groceries. But everything else closes down. So the only day that everything stays open until late is on Thursdays, but the rest of the week everything closes at 5 or 6 p.m., which is insane. Where I live, it's really calm, it's really nice, but it's so nice that nothing happens. So you don't have a cafe in where you can go and have a drink and talk to people or meet your friends. There's not such thing going around. It's just like a place where you go and sleep. It's just a place nearby the city, where a suburb that is just meant for you to have all your belongings, park your car, and then go to bed. Because apart from that, is kind of a snooze compared to what happens on the inner west, like in places like in Newtown, nearby Marrickville, or in the city itself. Beyond that, depending on the kind of person that you are, if you enjoy live music, for example, like I do, it can be like, where's everything? Isn't this Sydney like a proper city? No, not all of the city is like Sydney. It's just the CBD. When I used to live in Venezuela, I used to have, between friends, acquaintances, people that I knew, come to my place on a weekend or a Friday, and we could have a barbecue, have a good time, have some drinks. In here, developing those friendships or those relationships can be really hard, and it's something that I wasn't expecting. Most of the time, what I've noticed is that people, they already have their friends, if we're talking about Australians per se, and they have developed these friendships from, of course, years and years and years of them living here and being born here, because they started with their friendships at uni, or they started with the friendships on high school, and they remain close together, living perhaps in different suburbs, but together nonetheless. And that network has been created from the moment they were teenagers. When you are a migrant and you come here, when I arrived to Australia, I was 29 years old, 28, turning 29. I'm old compared to someone else, and then a 29-year-old person with no connections, just my wife, just my kid, that at the time he was 3, getting to try to find people with my same interests that will give a damn about me, that will care about what I thought, think, believe, or felt, was really hard, because it's not easy to find someone who is willing to get out of their way and not to renounce, but to acquire someone else into the network when they haven't been with you in ages, in never. They haven't met you before. And also, getting to know your neighbors is quite hard. When I lived in Parramatta, I lived there from 2013 to 2018. I lived there for 5 years. I never knew any of my neighbors. I never knew anyone in the building. I'm talking about a building that had 16 units. I never met anyone. I just talked to one person maybe when I moved in, and that was it. Apart from that, I didn't know who my neighbors were. I didn't know from where they came from. I didn't know anything. And that's really strange, because when you come from Latin America, in my case from Venezuela, We tend to be really, we embrace people. When we move to another place, we try to get to know them. I don't know if we do that because of safety, like to make sure that you don't fuck me over, or if I leave my apartment, to make sure that, hey, I'm not here. If you hear something, make sure that to tell me, because I'm out and about. You know, it's kind of unsafe in South America. But it's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, you can get to find friends, and I have found good friends in my journey, but it's been quite tricky and difficult. Also, when I first came, I had the objective of perhaps looking at those new friends from my own countrymen. I didn't try that much to find friends that were here from Australia. And that was also tricky because you tend to think, oh, that person speaks Spanish. And you know what's even better? That person not only speaks Spanish, but that person is also from the country where I'm from. So we have the same nationality, we have the same accent, it would be great. And it wasn't that great either, because people have different interests. And even though you share some things in common, like your language or the place that you come from, or even the city where you used to live but never met, fine. That doesn't mean that those people are going to be your friends, because the thing that matters the most is that the things that you have in common, the similarities in thinking, the similarities in how you see life, sometimes just listening to the language, just listening to the accent, doesn't mean that you will become friends. I had that in my mind for the longest time. I was always trying to see if someone had an accent, and then upon that accent I would change from speaking in English, because I used to work in a retail shop for 8 years, and whenever I heard someone who speak my language that I knew speak Spanish, and that I knew because of their accent were from Venezuela, I went to friend mode, like, hey, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo te va? I'm from Venezuela. And then I just received like coldness. I then realized, well, this person is just here on this shop doing an errand, and me trying to convert this customer into a friend shouldn't be the way to do things. I just stop, to the point that if I hear someone with definitely a Colombian or a Venezuelan accent, I just let them be, because having that commonality doesn't mean that you are going to become friends. So friends you find them in other instances, it takes a while, maybe through work, maybe through having a YouTube channel. Sometimes you find friends that way, or just by chance. But that's one of the things that I found difficult. I don't think it's because of the culture. It's more than anything the age in which people develop their network, and the age that me personally arrived to this country. It's the cost of living. Here things are really expensive, and then making mistakes as a migrant with things being super expensive can cost you a lot. Not only money, but it's a mental hassle when things don't go your way and you need to pay a lot of money to solve the situations that you get into. So, for example, here, it's not like in the US that you can buy a home with 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garage, a bit of a patio, or a backyard, and it's gonna cost you, depending on what you look for example, $200,000. Here, we live in one of the most expensive cities in the world, which is Sydney. Here, homes are at least $1.5 million. Aussie dollars, as it's quite expensive. It's become so expensive that many people say that my generation, millennials, and even seniors won't be able to get into home ownership, because the way things are increasing in price doesn't correlate to the income that you make. That is not a bad income, but nevertheless everything is expensive. Going to go and buy your groceries, you need to be really smart on where you do them, because if you go to Coles, you go to Woolworths, it's insanely expensive. If you go to Aldi, it will be half the price compared. So you need to be really smart on where you go to do those kind of things, because this country spending 20, 30, $40 in something so innocuous like a meal can go that way super fast. So you need to be really aware of that if you don't want to go broke. Now, is it worth living here? Well, all things considered, if you manage to understand the differences in culture, if you manage to understand and to, get rid of your expectations, and you just understand that the country is different, that it's safe, that it will give you things that you don't have in Latin America, for example, and if you take ownership of the differences and you understand them and you can live with them, is the perfect place to be. If you come to the realization that you need to go out every time, and for that you need to be living in the city, which is quite more expensive, and you have the money and then you make it work your way, it's perfect for you. The only difficulty comes and make this place not worth to live if you cannot adapt to the differences and find a way to still with you, to be yourself with those differences. I managed to understand that everything closes at 6. I managed to understand that I'm going to live in a place that is more tranquil, more relaxed, that if I want to go to a concert or to a gig, I need to drive to go to that place, that if everything closes down and after work I cannot buy something that I need, that I can go on Thursday because it will be open until 9. So there are things that are different, but if you embrace those differences and you understand them and you're just not all the time, oh my god, this place, then you're gonna have a good time. Because of course this place is a different place. This is not the place that was your home. This is a new place, and if you adapt to it, you understand it, you're gonna have the best time. It's almost 11 years now since we've been living here, and to be honest, we are super happy with the decision that we made. We're super happy that we decided to come to Australia and not Canada and not the US or not even South America. We're from Venezuela. We could have gone to Chile. And we are super happy with the decision, with all the heartache that we have had, with all the difficulties that we have encountered along the way, with all the things that have happened in our lives. We honestly believe, me and Dulcie, even though she's not here on this video with me, we are super happy to call ourselves Australians and to call this place home. This is home. It's been 11 years, and we cannot wait what's gonna happen next in the next decade of us living here down under. So thank you for watching this video. I'm gonna leave you this one here. It's in Spanish, but you can always change the subtitles to English if you wanted to, and it's why Australia is so empty. Go and take a look at that. In the meantime, thank you for being around, and if you're from Latin America, sigan australeando.